Reliant Heart aVAD and the genesis of the aVAD and what aVAD actually stands for. And we did our first implant, and we've enrolled, I think we're the number one enrollers in the bridge to transplant trial. We've enrolled 5 patients or six. And we've had good success. We've implanted, and I don't know where you get this randomization schedule, but we've done 4 controls. Actually, we've done 3 and 3, I guess. But 1 patient got transplanted very, very quickly. The other 2 got implanted, did well, and eventually all got transplanted. So we also have excellent survival. There you go. Otherwise, no one wants to implant it. And remarkably, he's about the only person who actually listened to me. And about 2 weeks later, I get this email chain starting about, well, you said this, and how about this design? And I looked at these pictures and I said, oh, great, they're pictures. Everybody can draw them in PDF. And we'll see when they come back. And then about a month later, you start seeing prototypes come back and make great progress. So really want to congratulate the Reliant Heart team because they do push up development. And so they asked me what the clinical need was, and I thought that their inflow cannula was very, very cumbersome, and it was just difficult to do, and I told them that's one of the reasons people don't like putting this pump. So they came up with this Fast Connect and True Core. So the True Core here basically cores out the LV apex, and then this Fast Connect is very similar to the other Fast Connects that you've seen, but really helps implantation of this pump. Flow pumps have complications, and those complications prevent us from using them in less sick patients, and it makes patients wait, and cardiologists wait till the last minute to put them in. So he said, well, what are the main complications of that? And so, there are many, as you know, but I think, we were all born with the pulse, and then we're taking a pulsatile specimen and making it less pulsatile. So I said, you may be able to improve things like GI bleeding and stroke if you can improve pulsatility. So driveline infection was a key problem. And of course, the earlier you could detect flow disturbance, the better. And they already had that with the True Flow and the remote monitoring. So, we kind of took these as our base principles and then developed this device, and we will pass this around. Roger, do you mind if we pass this around? There you go. Thank you, John. So this is the Reliant Heart aVAD, and it is an intraventricular device like Jarvik, which is also an intraventricular device, but this is a full support device. So this can flow 10 liters without a problem. And so here's the pump, and as you can see, it's an intraventricular pump with a flow probe and connection up to these things. How do you maintain natural pulsatility? So one of the issues with existing VADs is that because of the flow pattern of the blood and the angles that they need to do, most VADs dampen pressure transfer from the LV. So the best way to really maintain pulsatility, you're never going to get it by accelerating and decelerating a VAD, is to maintain the natural pulsatility of the LV. And when you have blood flow that has to go at right angles, or it gets dampened and has to go at right angles, or you have veins that are very, very short, you don't transfer pressure as well from the LV. Idea here is to try to create a pump that can maximally transfer that pressure and maintain pulsatility. And so the aVAD will be, this is the HVAD, the Heart Assist 5, the Heart Assist 5. And the aVAD has things that are very similar to the Heart Assist 5, but of course are modified to be able to put it intraventricular. So the first thing that you notice that's different about the Heart Assist 5 and the aVAD is that the veins are much deeper, okay? And the reason is because the magnets are actually in the veins. So when you compare that to another axial flow pump, you can see they can't put the magnets in the veins, so their magnets are in their core and their veins are very short. And because of that, the displacement of this pump is much higher than the displacement of other axial flow pumps. It's kind of like the paddle boat. When you have a paddle boat, you want to have a nice big paddle, because if you have a small paddle, you're going to be paddling a lot faster. And because of the magnets in the blades, you can create less radial contact, because the shear stresses towards the middle of the core are going to be less than the shear stresses on the outside of the core. Then you have, as you can see, the magnet here is in the impella. And so per each revolution, this displaces about 1.5 times or 1.3 times more cubic displacement than the existing axial flow pumps. Because of that, it actually lies much better on the HQ curve. It's a very, very flat HQ curve, and that transmits this LV pulse. And you can see that on the flow probe, you'll see a very robust change on flow because of that transmission of that pressure. You can also see that here. You can see the veins are very, very deep, and because of the deepness and low resistance of pressure transfer, this is a paper by Dr. Fraser at the Texas Heart Institute on an in vitro circuit. They were able to show that the pressure transfer from the Heart Assist 5 is much higher than that of any of the other VADs. And of course, the aVAD is just a variant of the Heart Assist 5. The other way you improve pulsatility is not only do you have to decrease the resistance to pressure transfer, but you have to allow the heart to be able, in the better portion of the Frank-Starling curve, to be able to contract. So as you know, most of the patients that we have are all the way out here on the right side of the Frank-Starling curve, and you want to bring them into this portion, which is the portion where the sarcomeres are a normal length and give you the most amount of pulsatility. How can you do that with LVADs? The best way to do that is you get the LVAD completely out of the pericardial space, and you can let the heart attain its maximal conicity, right? Because the hearts want to be conical. And so you can do things like this, where you can make a nice deep pocket, get the VAD completely out of the pericardial space, and this will preserve the LV shape in the maximal way possible. However, the problem with doing something like this is that this is highly variable. So you can have beautiful implants like this, and you can have ugly implants like that as well. And some of this you can't control. You may start with a beauty implant and end up with an ugly implant. So you can go interpericardial, which eliminates that pocket. However, it consumes a large amount of volume inside the pericardial space. And because of that, again, you don't keep you're not able to maximally unload the ventricle. And this is work done by Nir and Gabe, and I don't know if Taz is here, but this is the University of Chicago team in conjunction with Roberto Lang, who's our 3D echocardiographer par excellence. And you can see here, when you have an extrapericardial device, in gray is minimum RPMs, and in red is maximum RPMs. And you can see, as you increase the RPMs, you actually create a beautiful cone with an increase in conicity, and that is putting this LV back in a better portion of the Starling curve to be able to generate the pressure that you can actually have somewhat of a pulse. In an interpericardial VAD, you can see that the unloading is just not as well. This is the light blue there is at minimum RPM, the red is at maximum RPM. You can almost see the indentation here of where the interpericardial device would be, and you can see the conicity is just not as robust as it is of an extrapericardial device. So what you want to do is eliminate the pocket, and you want to eliminate as much volume in the intrapericardial space as possible. So at an intraventricular pump like the aVAD is good, because you can actually do you put all the motor inside the LV, and outside all you have is one elbow, as you can see. So that minimizes any type of dimpling or pressure on the ventricle, and it will be able to pull the ventricle to the Frank-Starling curve. So again, improves pulsatility. The other big problem that we all face is driveline infection. Driveline infection rates are anywhere from 10 to 20 episodes per patient year. And honestly, I know everybody has their own ways to treat it, but in my opinion, it's a terminal event. You can maintain people on it. You can keep people going for years and years and years on chronic antibiotics, but it's never can be cured. And eventually they develop resistance, sepsis. And so one of the things that I told Roger is, why can't you develop a modular drive line. So you have a short drive line that you put into a subcutaneous pocket. You can put an external lead that connects to that and bring it out of the skin. And if that gets infected, the first sign of infection, you just take them right back to the operating room. You take out that external component, you open up this pocket, and you put a new lead in a totally different spot. And you can keep doing that. I mean, you could see these patients with, potholes all over their chest, but at least they won't be infected. And so, of course, it's an idea that many people have had, but Roger and his team were actually able to implement. So they came up with this unique connector. So this is a 10-pin connector or something?
It's an 11-pin connector, 3 for the power side, and the other 8 for the flow probe. And it's ball seal. They're the only company that makes this sort of connector.
Remember that what you do for ICDs is a 2-pin connector, maybe a 3-pin connector. So this is an 11-pin connector that's been hermetically created, tested, etc. And so what you do is you have your device, and then you have a short electrical connector that you bring up into the subcutaneous space. You put this connector in, and then you tunnel this outside wherever you want to tunnel it, and that tunnel can be moved if anything ever gets infected. So I think this is a great advance, and hopefully will be implemented very rapidly. The third component of what I thought would be important in terms of improving outcomes was to create a sentinel system for early alert. This exists right now, even with the Heart Assist 5. This is, again, the true ultrasonic flow sensor on the outflow graph with worldwide cellular capability to alert medical personnel to if there's any disturbance in flow or power consumption. And both our patients had this. We used it. I think we've seen several patients from all over the world who benefited from this technology. In summary, the Reliant Heart aVAD is a brand new intraventricular full flow pump. You can see on the sample there that this height is adjustable, so you can put it in and out of the LV as needed. I think from a Jan perspective here, this is perfect MIS device. It could be possibly used for biventricular support. It has a modular driveline for infection. It has a very low power consumption, the lowest of any of the other VADs out there. And that makes it possible to use small batteries now, and the modular driveline makes it possible when the Liberty system is available to just make it forward compatible and go TET. It has a very flat HQ curve and low resistance to pressure gradients, so it allows transmission of LV pulsatility. It has true flow and VAD link. And I'm hoping that this is really a compelling new generation of LVAD. Thank you very much.